Morning, everybody. My name is Councillor James Pasternak, and I'm the Chair of North York Community Council, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call meeting 28 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. The public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I am hopeful that we will go back up to North York Community Center by the new year. I ask for everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. The clerk staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the North York Community Council's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Clerk's IT will be available to assist members with their devices. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or motion, I ask that members ensure they turn their video on and to raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you they must still submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at nycc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we were in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. I don't see any. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on October 13th, 2021? Councillor Cole, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, I understand the clerk has 4 pieces of new business. I believe we're going to add one and then take it off. Councillor Cole, I believe the accessible parking spot on Mulland Avenue. We have to add it and then we'll take it off if you so desire. 232 Snowden Avenue, request for city solicitor to attend the Toronto Local Appeal Body. Preliminary report, item 2826, preliminary report, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, application 3140 to 3170 Dufferin Street and 6068 Apex Road. And a motion requirements for posting building permits. May I have a motion to add those items to the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So before we get started with the items on the agenda, I want to inform the committee and members of the public that the city encountered a geospatial software problems that resulted in owners of lands not receiving a legislative required notice on the following agenda item, NY 28.1 final report, zoning bylaw amendment application, 722-724 Marlee Avenue. So North York Community Council cannot hold the public meeting on the zoning bylaw amendment today, and the item will be withdrawn from the agenda. I'll be asking for a motion to withdraw the item.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, could you explain the mumbo-jumbo reason why this didn't get out? The notices didn't get out?
Well, it sounds like the statutory requirements for distribution and notice weren't met.
Why not?
Well, if I'm not privy to what goes internally with our mailings and our statutory notices, but I assume the requirements weren't met, and then so we can't discuss the item today. If you want more details, I can hand the mic over to the clerk. But
yes, I would like an explanation for the public because the technical language doesn't really help explain what happened.
Okay, I will ask the clerk to explain why this cannot be discussed today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Cole, unfortunately it came to our attention that using our mailing lists when they were pulled from the database that the addresses are pulled from, there were addresses that were missed. Unfortunately, they did not receive the statutory notice for the meeting, and therefore we haven't met our requirements to notify the property owners in the vicinity to allow us to proceed with the meeting.
So how many addresses or residents were missed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, I believe there may have been 2 properties that were missed.
So 2 properties were missed. So every property has to be included? And if you miss 1 or 2, it says cancellation of the public meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a requirement to notify all the properties within 120 meters of the subject site. We may have legal on the line, and if they are, they may want to provide a bit more additional details.
Yes, I would. Just for future reference here, I didn't realize that if you miss 1 or 2 properties, the process is canceled. But could legal explain what the requirements are?
Councillor Cole, through you, Mr. Chair, the issue is that we have statutory requirements that say very clearly what our obligations are with respect to notice. And if it comes to our attention that notice has been missed, even for just 1 or 2 individuals, it could down the line potentially affect our process. If one of those individuals were to become aware of it and object to the process, going ahead without notice to them, it could be problematic. And so our policy is if we become aware of missing notice, even for just 1 or 2 properties, we do pull the item and then try to reissue notice in the completely appropriate manner. It's safer for everyone and the best path forward.
But I've had complaints in the past that people didn't receive a notice.
Right.
We didn't cancel the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, councillors, it certainly happens that clerks is not made aware in time and that 1 or 2 people are missed. In that instance, we do tend to go ahead because the process is already underway. In this instance, the matter was brought to the clerk's attention ahead of this item going to community council, and as a result, the decision was made to pull the item and reissue notice. It's not always possible to do it in that manner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole, and thank you, staff. So item 28.1 is no longer on the agenda. Why don't we run through the agenda now for non-timed items and items that I guess do not have deputants. But the first item is North York 28.4. That's in my ward. It does have a deputant listed, so I'll hold it down. 719 Sheppard Avenue West. 28.5, final report, application to lift a holding provision H on Phase 2 lands for a series of addresses on Yonge Street, Cummer, and Averill Crescent. That is Councillor Fillion's item. Councillor Fillion?
Yeah, I can move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved on 28.5. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 28.6, final report, part lot exemption application 1970 Victoria Park Avenue and 9 Clintwood Gate. Deputy Mayor Minna Wong, that is your item.
It's Clintwood Gate, and I'm happy to move it.
Okay, moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 28.7 is a final report for 101 Senlac, Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act property. That is being held for deputations. 28.8, preliminary report zoning amendment application 333 Wilson Avenue. I will move the staff recommendations to organize a community consultation. We will be in touch with planning staff about the distribution area, as we'd like to expand it beyond 120 meters. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 28.9, preliminary report zoning bylaw amendment application, 93 York Road. Councillor Robinson?
Yes, I'd like to move staff recommendations, please.
Staff recommendations move preliminary report 93 York Road. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Fillion, are you taking carriage of Councillor Carroll's items today?
No, she hasn't asked me to.
Oh, sorry. Deputy Mayor Minna Wong, you're taking carriage of Councillor Carroll's items?
Yeah.
Okay, So here's one for you. 2810 preliminary report, official plan amendment and zoning amendment applications, 1 Greenbriar Road and 635 Sheppard Avenue East.
I'll move it.
Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2811, preliminary report, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment for applications 2 to 4, 6, 8, 10 to 12, Oakburn, Crescent. Councillor Fillion?
I have an additional motion if the clerks have it.
We'll hold the item down. It's not quite ready. Item 2812, a series of addresses on Avondale, Bales Avenue, and Glendora Avenue. Councillor Fillion?
Recommendations.
Okay, so that's an official plan amendment, zoning amendment, rental housing demolition applications for a series of addresses moved by Councillor Fillion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2813, preliminary report, official plan amendment application 33, 37, 39, 41, and 43 Center Avenue. Councillor Fillion?
Yes, staff have an amendment on that one, an amended motion.
Okay, we have the motion. We're just putting it on the screen. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so we proceed with a community consultation meeting after the applicant has had a further opportunity to change their application in keeping with initial guidance from the planning staff and extensive discussions with both staff and the councillor.
Well, it's certainly creative. All those in favor of the motion? Item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2814, Always Stop Control, Stanley Green Neighborhood. I'll hold that down because there is a motion we're working on. 2815, Payment-In-Lieu of Parking, 14 St. Clements Avenue. Councillor Cole?
I'll move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved on 2815, Payment-In-Lieu of Parking, 14 St. Clements. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2816, Parking and Traffic Regulations, Thomas Clark Way. Deputy Mayor Minna-Wong, it's actually Councillor Carroll's item, but what would you like to do? What's the
Sure,
direction?
I'll move that. Yes, I'll move it.
Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2817, designation of fire routes, an amendment to Chapter 880, 37 Frederick Tisdale Drive. I will move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2818, designation of fire routes, amendment, Chapter 880, fire routes, 200 Hanna Road. Councillor Robinson?
I'll move staff recommendations, please.
Staff recommendations moved on 2018 fire routes on Hanna, 200 Hanna Road. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2819, now this item continues to run into problems because of a naming moratorium, which I do not agree with. And so I'm going to have to move this to, I don't know, why don't we defer it to, we don't mean to.
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Just on that item. I understand that there's a naming moratorium, but if you were to refer it to council without recommendation, could a 2/3 vote of council overturn that decision?
I think we'd have to reopen at council the,
I understand that there's a moratorium, but council can make exceptions with a 2/3 vote. And help me out and tell me whether a 2/3 vote, if you want to rename a street, whether that could be accomplished that way.
yeah, and it is, I believe it's only to study it. I don't believe we're actually renaming it.
I have a can clerk answer that question?
Yeah, so you know what, thank you, Deputy Mayor. You know what, I'm going to adopt that item, because these deferrals are ridiculous, and the whole moratorium is ridiculous. So I'll move, and it's only a public consultation.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Gold.
How long will this moratorium be in place?
Second quarter of 2022 is my understanding. But can clerks answer my question?
Mr. Chairman, ask the question.
I asked
Yeah,
a question
so
before.
the Deputy Mayor probably shouldn't have answered that, but yeah, it goes well into 2022. It's all connected with the Dundas Square issue, but the moratorium held all namings up unless it's an urgent naming, like a local road or something. But this is merely a consultation, so there's nothing in that moratorium that stops staff from consulting.
So we can consult
That would be my feeling, yes.
the renaming?
And
Are we allowed to?
yes, so we're going to proceed with, I'm going to move this item to have staff commence a consultation for the naming of this this pathway. And Councillor Cole, you and I have an item at Bathurst and Lawrence to build renaming of a building, a TCH building that's been held up for months. And I would say that we direct staff at the next council meeting to consult on that one as well.
Yes, to honor Michael Feldman, the former councillor. Yeah, we'll prepare that for next council meeting.
I think so. Okay, so I'm going to move the recommendations on 2819, and all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 20, encroachment appeal, 1580 Avenue Road.
I move staff recommendation.
Councillor
Cole.
Councillor Cole is moving staff. Okay, it's 1 minute to 10, so we're just going to hold that item down. I thought we could squeeze it in, but why don't we go back to the top of the agenda? So item 28.1 has been withdrawn. Okay, I thought we did that already. Okay, so item 28.1, I need a motion to withdraw this item. All those in favor?
Which item is that?
It's yours. It's 722 and 724 Marlee Avenue.
Yes, also move, withdraw that, which means that there will be no public meeting until the proper mailings have been done.
Right, so we'll try and do that statutory distribution and notice period again.
And not to miss those two houses.
Yeah, they must have found enough substantial evidence that they were not on the list. Often people just throw these things out, and then they realize, well, no one ever told me. But these actually were not on the list, so that was the error. Okay, so I'd like to, and I know there were a number of deputants. We had 5 deputants, so I can advise the deputants whether they're on the line watching or not. I guess it's Sean McGaffey, Aline Marins, Salih Kordmaz, Joe Norbriga, and Sandra Diaz. We will keep you informed through the statutory notice on when this item will come back, but it's been withdrawn for this meeting. So we can now go to item 28.2, request for direction, official plan amendment and zoning application 2810 to 2814 Bayview Avenue. We have a number of deputants. Is Ki Feng on the line? Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Feng? Yes.
Mr. Chair, is the applicant speaking? If so, they should be going first.
I see a bunch of names here, but no flagging of the applicant.
Okay, if they're not presenting, that's fine. If they're on the line, they should go first.
Yes. Is the applicant, is the owner of this property on the line? No. So, once again, for those deputing on 2810 to 2814 Bayview Avenue, is there anyone on the line that is the property owner? Or representing the property owner?
It's hard for them to tell that if their mics aren't on.
Yeah, they can respond. Okay, so Councillor Fillion, I don't think the property owner is here, is deputing today.
Okay, sure, fine.
Yeah.
That's their choice.
Okay, so we'll go back to Ki Feng. Mr. Feng?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Shall I start now?
Yes, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm a senior citizen and I've lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. I walk in the neighborhood, and in particular, I walk out to Bayview Avenue along Irvington Avenue. If Irvington Avenue and other neighboring roads are open for construction traffic, I'm worried about the potential increase in traffic from construction trucks and construction workers. My concerns are twofold. Firstly, Irvington Avenue is not a straight road. It has a north south and a west east stretch with an almost 90-degree bend in between. There are usually cars parked along the west side just before the bend. The 3-hour parking limit does not seem to be enforced. Trucks going south may have to swerve into the opposite lane to negotiate the bend, posing a collision hazard. Frequent traffic makes it hazardous to cross Irvington Avenue from Fonda Avenue, greatly affecting the residential nature of the neighborhood. Secondly, construction debris, in particular gravels, will be scattered on the neighborhood roads. I understand that there is a requirement to clean up the roads outside of a construction site daily. But again, this is not usually performed, as I have observed from the various sites of the infilling constructions. The gravels have a tendency to be churned up by tires, both from normal traffic and especially from the more massive construction trucks. The debris would become projectiles, hitting pedestrians if they happen to be around. The chance of this happening may be small, but the consequence is great. There's nothing called accident. If we create hazardous conditions, unwanted events will occur. That's my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feng. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Laura Lothian-Bryant?
Hello. Thank you for hearing me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. My family has been living on Irvington Crescent for over 50 years, and I personally have lived here for 37 years, raised 2 kids, and actually looking forward to showing future grandchildren the loveliness that this area is, or at least I should say I hope to. This area has been a hidden gem within its selection of homes, perfect for those buyers looking to enter the housing market with new families, looking to downsize, or simply looking for a nice place to grow old in. It has always been a place where you feel like you escape the hustle and bustle of the bigger city. With no vehicle access to the street from Bayview, it has proven to be a fantastic place for walking, running, and or cycling due to the low volume of traffic. This has significantly increased also since COVID, and from what I've witnessed, it will remain strong even as we get back to normal, quote, back to normal. This also brings to mind the walk-through access point at the end of Irvington Crescent on the place that is known as the Circle to the neighborhood. This walkthrough greatly impacts all of our lives. Will it be kept open for our walking access through the build? And will it still be there after the build? It needs to be. I know many of us depend on it, as do many of the other nearby neighborhoods. Those west of us, east of us, use Irvington as to be a safe and nicer area to walk to and from Bayview instead of taking Sheppard. We take great pride in our street, as demonstrated by the partnership that was developed, and I think it was with the city, on beautifying this very circle that will be destroyed by this development. It's a place that I've witnessed being used by families over the years to teach their kids how to ride their bikes, to play a game of ball hockey, or to sit on the logs and just have a break from their walk. And it's used because there's little to no traffic there, so they feel safe. The city wants to intensify the subway corridor, and I get that. But what this building actually does is intensify our streets, the back streets, not the main streets of Sheppard and Bayview. We are actually taking the hit of the impact. And it's my understanding that it's not even going to be on one of those half-circle driveways in front of the buildings for deliveries and drop-offs, etc. This will also cause confusion for the deliveries, Uber drivers, visitors, and likely will result in the vehicles idling on our streets more as they try to figure things out, and or driving around more as they're trying to figure things out, looking for the correct location. I don't see any positives for our community with this project. I would hazard to say even that the more recent buyers might not even have purchased their homes here had they known this building was going to happen. While I certainly would prefer this building does not happen, I believe the developers should be obligated to work with the community and to do all in their power to mitigate the negative impact on the surrounding community in which they want to build. I don't feel they are at the table truly wanting to work with the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation. Any questions for the deputants? No, I don't see any. Okay, Laura, thank you very much. Barbara Garbins?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, Ms. Garbins, thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I want to add to the excellent presentations that have already been done, and a couple things specifically. In the report for action on page 3, under proposal, the paragraph that states a new municipal sidewalk connecting Bayview would run the length of the site along Irvington. Additionally, on page 11, it talks about it again. It says a new public sidewalk along Irvington frontage will provide safe pedestrian connection along the street to Bayview. It will be constructed to the west property line to allow for the continuation of the sidewalk in the future further into the neighborhood. If you actually look at, on page 18 and page 21, you've got some pictures of what the neighborhood, the project is intended to look like. You'll see that we're talking about an extremely small strip of property between, I would imagine, the east part of the access lane into the property to Bayview Avenue. The neighborhood doesn't want sidewalks. There's really no room for sidewalks. The setback of the houses are not deep, so you would be pretty much eroding a huge part of the front lawn. And depending where you put it, of course, I doubt if it's the inner circle, it'll be the outer circle, where there are trees which the city planted close to the street, as well as hydrants, etc. So my suggestion is that the sidewalk, if there has to be one, it is inside the property line of the development rather than on this kind of municipal green space that is around the circle. The second point I want to make has to do on page 12 with the open space and parkland, where it talks about the applicant is required to satisfy the parkland dedication requirement through cash in lieu. We want green space. We want the dedication of parkland to stay within our community. We would prefer to see deciduous and evergreen trees planted which form a natural barrier against noise and pollution from Bayview. So that's the second point. The third point that I'd like to just maybe add to what Mr. Fung had said is we are very concerned about safety during construction and congestion of vehicles. The big issue is where is everybody going to park in terms of the workers when they come to construct the building. There should be some limited some prohibition and limitation of parking space. There is definitely a space within the People's Church, which has been rented in the past. People's Church is maybe a 10-minute walk from the space, the lot site at the most, and it might be a possible negotiation item that you might want to consider in terms of where workers might park. But in terms of the neighborhood, the early morning and the late afternoon, although we may not have the same rush hour we used to, there are children playing in the afternoon on the streets. You've got cars parked. They could dash out from between cars, and there could be some issues of accident. The final point I want to make is the development has been allotted 53 spaces for parking. I would like to see if that could consider to be negotiated downward. Possibly, I don't know what the number might be, but most people will be moving into the area for ease of communication with transportation hubs, hospital shopping, etc. It may not be that 53 spaces are needed. So that would be a potential negotiating point. Thank you for listening.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No, I don't see any. Thank you very much, Ms. Garbins. Ron Baird?
Yes.
Mr. Baird?
Good morning.
Yes, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I live at 32 Irvington Crescent with my family, my wife and 8-year-old son. I have been a long-term resident in the neighborhood for over 20 years. I purchased the house specifically because it was on a dead-end street with very low traffic. I could have bought north of Sheppard or in other neighborhoods where they have long, straight streets, but I didn't want that type of traffic or quality of atmosphere, vibe of the street. I think that I'm terrified, and my wife is terrified, that with adding a large high-rise building at the end of our street, it will negatively impact the livability of the street. And I'm terrified that one of the many children in the neighborhood are going to get killed because of a construction vehicle or because of the increased traffic. All the children in the neighborhood, all the people in the neighborhood are used to a quiet street, and it will take many years for that that vibe to change, and for people to become more aware of the higher traffic levels. And I think previous deputant talked about the corner of the street down at Calvin and Irvington where it meets. And on a regular basis, I see people and vehicles stringlining the corner. It'd be very difficult for construction delivery vehicles to make that corner and do it safely. The residents are, sorry, I'm curious as to whether anyone, including the developer, has created a risk assessment to make sure that all the hazards created either during construction or during the steady state have been addressed and all hazards will be mitigated. I don't believe that has been done. During the construction period, we're talking cement trucks, dump trucks, excavator deliveries, cranes. You know, this is a large amount of traffic that, although only short term for a couple of years, I think will result in a significant risk. The neighbors are quite rightly appalled that the city planners would approve this development, and obviously none of the planners on the report have walked through this neighborhood to see the damage that they will do by approving this plan. So we request that the development proposal be denied by Community Council and a recommendation of planners be dismissed. And one final statement, the residents of the neighborhood, the current residents, have everything to lose related to this development and absolutely not one thing to gain. We will lose tree canopy, we'll have higher traffic, we'll have more noise, we'll have construction disruption for many years, and this is in addition to the infill construction that is causing nonstop havoc in our neighborhood. And we urge strongly that Community Council deny the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baird. Any questions for the deputant? No, I don't see any. Thank you very much, Mr. Baird. Esther Choi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
As a resident on Granley behind the zoning area, my concerns are very direct, as you can imagine, and please keep in mind that most of the residents who are affected are those with young system, multi-generational. One supports the proposal and we're completely against it. The first thing we are worried about is the long-term consequences, like the environmental factors, like toxins and air quality, noise pollution that are a huge concern. With the removal of the landscape and the back, including tall trees, will they cut the trees along the cul-de-sac and their side of the fence along the property between the houses on the lane? If so, how many? We don't want sticks and a range of variety of reasons. A tree consultation with the immediate neighbors would be greatly appreciated, as we not only have air quality and sound absorption to consider, but landscaping as well as privacy factors to consider. Falling leaves, shade, water absorption, depending on the tree type, and sometimes even the scent. We're also concerned about the water drainage with the removal of the green spaces. If you're a resident on Granley, you know that the Granley properties go downwards towards the front of our properties. And even the backyard has a bit of pooling just because of the way that it dips down. And with climate change increasing, we do worry that with increased rainfall and extreme weather possibilities, that this is going to be a factor, and we want more permeable surfaces for this development if it's to occur. And we also want to know what they're going to do regarding the drainage improvement regarding that. The third point, and probably the one that I'm also worried about, is the garbage. Where is it going to be located? Where will the trucks be accessing it weekly? Where will it be stored? Will it be contained entirely inside, or will it be located outdoors? Will people be able to hear people throwing garbage into the bins all day and night? What about the smell, debris, etc.? We have children playing in the yard, family barbecues, and we have to consider that aspect because it's very direct to us. The fourth point is the consequences of increased vehicles that a lot of people already talked about. This part of Granley, unfortunately, it is a very short street. There's two curves, there's two turns, and there's no visibility. This part of the street, even though it's short, has families learning, kids learning to bike, people playing basketball on the streets, and I can't imagine that it's safe to increase vehicles when it's already reduced visibility because it is Willowdale and we have tall trees and not a lot of lighting, and there are turns onto that part of the street. We also worry that the increased vehicles is going to affect the street parking. It's already really bad towards Calvin and Sheppard and Wilfred and Sheppard. And we do worry that, especially during construction, that it's going to get worse. But even post-construction, with an increase of deliveries and increase of visitors, how that's going to be handled. The delivery people, are they going to be blocking the streets? When there's a fire situation, where will the fire trucks be located? Because it's a cul-de-sac. Will they be blocking the other homes along there? The other thing is, we talked about the traffic reports in the past, the traffic studies, and I haven't really heard much about it since. And we were wondering if there were traffic studies done pre-pandemic, under normal circumstances, for the three places that I'm worried about, which is Bayview and Sheppard, which is considered one of the worst intersections in the city, Wilfred and Sheppard, and Kelvin and Sheppard. And what the city plans to do to improve the situation, especially if they plan to increase occupancy in the already extremely bad intersection. You can talk about saying we're developing along the TTC line, but we know for a fact that there's going to be more vehicles as a result. The third last point is the quality of life. We heard from some of the neighbors who had construction happening during the pandemic that people were doing construction 6 to 7 days a week. As you know, during the pandemic and even now, we have young children doing school online and teenagers doing mixed learning as they plan for university applications. To basically have large sounds and debris coming towards us, air quality being a factor as well with the dust. We feel like to do it during pandemic times, it's an impossible situation and will greatly be a factor for their success as they try to already handle a very difficult situation by learning at home. The other point is smoking. Someone with a family member with lung cancer who never smoked a cigarette in their life, I learned that Asian women are more susceptible to lung cancer due to air pollution, due to a genetic disposition. And there's a lot of Asians in this community, so I'm sure that it affects not only them, but it affects everyone. As mentioned in the first point regarding the environmental factors with air quality, we want to know if the outdoor space developers proposed for the residents would be a non-smoking one. And the last point is Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is already weak as is, and having a large wall behind us with this development, this is a concern that it will worsen an already bad situation, especially considering that many of the residents work and learn from home during the pandemic. Thank you for listening, and I hope these will be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? No?
The questions were already addressed, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Ms. Choi. And that concludes deputants. There's nobody else waiting to speak on this item? No, we're good. Questions for staff? Deputy Mayor Menawong?
Yeah, this is 7 stories, correct? How tall is
correct, Councillor.
And I mean, I worry that, I mean, I just look at it, it's on Bayview near Sheppard, right near a transit node. 7 stories, I mean, compared to what I'm getting in my ward, which is, it's not necessarily apples to apples, but 7 stories there doesn't seem like a lot. Is it?
I mean, we've looked at the height, Councillor, and we think it's an appropriate height relative to the width of the, relative to the width of the right-of-way there,
Yeah.
and the transition that it can provide to the neighborhood, stable residential neighborhood to the west.
Okay. And you're recommending approval for this, yes?
We're recommending support. Is it appeal, Councillor? Is it a request for direction report?
Request for direction, and you're looking for support.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions for staff? I don't see anyone. Speakers?
Yes, I have a motion.
Okay, Councillor Fillion, let's put the motion on the screen. Oh my gosh, okay.
Okay, so basically it's that we oppose the application but continue to work with the applicant. And the issue isn't the 7-story building. Certainly some of the residents would, you know, much prefer that there isn't anything built there. But as Councillor Minnan-Wong said, that's certainly a reasonable sized development, even on a small strip of land that close to the subway. The issue is with where the traffic exits the development. The applicant, unfortunately, purchased a small piece of land right where the cars enter the ramp to get on the westbound 401. So in some ways, they're the author of their own misfortune there. They either didn't check with MTO to see if traffic would be allowed to go out onto Bayview, or did check and ignored it. Had they either not purchased it, obviously they wouldn't have a problem, or if they'd purchased more land further to the north, they probably wouldn't have had a problem. But they purchased a small property and have their exit coming out in the middle of their property, pretty much onto the ramp going on to 401. Their solution to that is then, okay, well, let's run all the traffic through the neighborhood, which is an enclosed neighborhood, which doesn't have any traffic on it other than the people who live on the street. So anybody who has, and it's an area that has been regenerated a lot over the last 10 years or so. So someone purchasing a new home, building a home, putting an addition on their house, if they did some homework, could certainly foresee that somebody would build a larger building on Bayview Avenue. They could not reasonably foresee that somebody would buy a small piece of property at the on-ramp to the 401 and then say, oh, okay, we're just going to run all the traffic through the neighborhood. That's not how we've done planning in North York. Access where possible, you take it from the main street. And that's really what should be happening here. So the development per se is not what's the problem, it's the access. And the applicant has several potential remedies, and I've tried to have discussions with them to pursue some of those, which include acquiring some property further north and having their exit closer to Sheppard rather than to the 401 ramp, reducing their parking to a level that the MTO might consider it. There's a number of potential solutions. They have been somewhat stubborn in not pursuing those solutions. So I'm proposing today that we not support the development, but keep working, have our staff work with the applicant to try to come up with some solution that would allow the traffic to go out onto Bayview. And if we can achieve that, there's no problem in approving it, notwithstanding that the residents will be negatively impacted by the construction and would rather not have that building there. But, that part is unavoidable, having the cars running through the neighborhood. And not just for this application, but really setting a precedent for other applications near Bayview and Sheppard. The next guy along is going to want to run all their traffic through the neighborhood as well. And that just fundamentally changes the character of that neighborhood, and we should be doing what we can to avoid that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, you're done? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fillion. Any questions for the mover? I just had one, and the motion sort of jumped up on the screen pretty quickly. It sort of went up and came down quickly. Ministry of Transportation is mentioned, I guess, a few times in the motion. Have they been in this conversation in the past, and what has their response been? Usually it's hard to...
I have had 3 or 4 conversations with the ministry, and I don't want to misrepresent their position. It sort of has depended a little bit on who you talk to and which day, but what's clear is they have a big problem with what is being proposed, and I think it's fair to say they would consider something that they would consider other solutions. I think their preferred solution is to have the exit further north on Bayview, but they, I think, would also consider other options which reduce the amount of parking to perhaps a level that could safely exit in the morning. But I don't want to put, words in their mouths. They have, I think they would like to see a different proposal, which they would then consider.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Any other speakers on the item? Okay, let's put the motion back on the screen. Okay, there we go. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 28.3, we have deputants. It's 5203 to 5215 Yonge Street and 11 Parkview. We have two deputants. Is Sherilyn Matthew Vatiz on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, thank you, Ms. Vatiz. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to say that I live at 110 Parkview Avenue, which is 2 blocks east of the development. And I have lived on Parkview Avenue for 37 years. And I was a volunteer community leader and part of YSARA. I was co-chair of YSARA, which is a coalition of ratepayer organizations from 1986 to 2000. So a lot of the development that you see on Yonge Street were built under the former North York official plan under a process called consensus planning exercise, which included the developers, the ratepayers, and the city, which on the whole has worked out very well. So I've seen a lot of changes, and but it's still a great area to live in. However, I do not support this application as proposed for 4 reasons. The first one is that the building is too high. Parkview is a short block, which means that it's closer to the stable residential area, and this building as proposed is much taller than the surrounding buildings, especially the one that has been built on the north side of Parkview at Yonge. So it would be much taller. And also, it would create a very unpleasant, windy corner and street on Parkview and on Yonge Street. There are many pedestrians on Yonge Street and on Doris Avenue, which is the north-south road parallel to Yonge, and on the surrounding residential streets, which means a lot of people would be avoiding this corner of this strip. And an important consideration is that there are many elderly people in the area, and there are also children who walk to and from McKee Elementary School. And so they would be affected by the unpleasant environmental conditions that this building would create. The other factor is number 2, there would be shadowing affecting the residential neighborhood, affecting the enjoyment of our neighborhood and our backyards, and again, the surrounding area. But most importantly is number 3, and that is that we have here a really wonderful and rare opportunity to expand the much needed parkland in the neighborhood, and it would actually be an extension of the Wilkett Creek Linear Park. It actually starts right there on this land, and there's a little triangular strip of land that is parkland. It's actually pretty pathetic. However, it is a kind of beacon of hope right adjacent to 11 Parkview Avenue. And beside that is a municipal parking lot that runs along the laneway behind the development towards Kingsdale, which is a southerly part of this block. And it's a perfect opportunity to then connect to the Wilkett Creek Park that is on Parkview and Kingsdale. So, and it would really be a much needed green space. Right now, people walk from the surrounding condominiums along the boulevard on Forest and the linear park, the Willowdale Park, and it's crowded. And there's something very appealing about the area, and we find that this is much needed. So this is a rare opportunity for the city to use the space and the municipal parking lot and the existing little strip, plus the house at 11 Parkview, in order to expand this parkland that is much needed. The other thing that we to consider is point number 4. There is a real need for a kind of exclusive or higher end condominiums. The houses in my area are around $3 million, and a lot of people are finding that their children have moved out and they would like to stay in the area, and there's no place. This would be an opportunity.
You'll have to, you'll have to just wrap up. You're over 5 minutes.
Yeah, and this is the last point. So this is a rare opportunity for people who live in the area to stay in the area and have the amenities that they like. And also there's an example on Pemberton and Kenneth, where the developer didn't want to provide any parkland and then used the parkland in his marketing to sell his development, his condos, and did very well. So this would be a rare opportunity on many ways, and I request that this application be reviewed.
All right, if you could, yeah, great. Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant?
Point of order, is it possible, Mr. Speaker, to have a split screen? So while the deputants were speaking about a particular piece of property or area relates to the development, that we at the same time could see the property visually, and then also others that are on this virtual council meeting could also see the property in question.
Well, that's beyond my role as chair. It's an IT issue. Certainly everyone has a copy of the agenda and all the diagrams and maps in them. It's a good idea, but it's beyond my pay grade. So why don't we leave that in the hands of...
Perhaps, could I ask the clerk why this is not possible? Given it's not just for the members of the North York Community Council, but it's for the general public, because this is a public meeting open to every citizen in Toronto, so they don't all have digital copies, etc. So it would be, if we're going to do these things virtually, we got to do them right.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're bringing virtual to an end, but...
Yeah, I believe it when I see it, yeah.
Well...
Will the clerk respond to this about the possibility of...
Yeah,
I've raised this before.
Yeah, we've seen graphics on the screen before, even when we were meeting in person. So there's no procedural problem with it. I think it's just logistics.
James,
we can look into it.
The other thing is, Mr. Chair, if I need to look at an application, I've got more than one screen open here. I was looking at the last application, Councillor Fillion's on Bayview. I went to the report online and looked at all the diagrams there. So
yeah, but it's not for you and members of council. I said this is a public meeting, and the citizens of Toronto have a right to see the visual representation on the screen in this virtual meeting. It's not about us.
Well, ideally, ideally,
say
if
the deputants can use the internet it's this thing called the internet, and it's this thing called the City of Toronto website, where they can go find the applications and look themselves.
Well, we've got to make things easier for people because it's been 2 years of virtual meetings, and we've got to get up to speed here and help people to see the properties in question, make it easier for them and not have them search. You know, you can afford the 2 or 3 computers, the general public cannot.
Okay. It's something that IT can look into, but as I said, I am hopeful that this will be one of our last virtual meetings and we'll be meeting in person.
But I've raised this before, over a year ago when we started. I've raised this same issue about putting up the representation of the item in question as it deals with description of parkland, parking lot, where the building is located. So I think the public has a right to see this property in question before us as we're discussing it and as the deputants are making their deputations.
Yeah, so I think the only way to do that, it couldn't really be driven by IT. Presenters' rights have to go to the planner on the file, and they could put something on the screen and sort of flag as the deputants talking about parkland, adjacent parkings, adjacent streets. They could put that on the screen if they have presenters' rights. So
yeah, but again, I asked for this over a year ago and still hasn't been done.
okay, so we're going to ask the clerk and IT to see whether that can be accommodated in the future. I don't think it's a bad idea. It's just that, you know, you have members of the public deputing, referencing various geographical points on an application, and a planner trying to show on the screen what this deputant is talking about. Logistically, it's not the easiest, but let's leave it with us, and we'll come back with some ideas at our next meeting.
Well, I just hope that this isn't that difficult, given, you know, the sophistication of new digital communication. And so, I mean, I'm not asking for something that is unheard of.
Oh, it's not an unreasonable request. I mean, it's...
So again, but I've asked a year ago, still haven't done it. And I don't know how much longer I have to wait for this to be done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cole. Is Shoja Zain not present? Okay, so we've done deputations on 28-3, 5203, 5215 Yonge Street, and 11 Parkview. Are there questions for staff? I don't see any questions for staff. Are there any speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll move the staff recommendations, which are refusal, and this is one of many god-awful applications we are getting, and you know, members of community council are familiar with the procession of applications in previous years in the North York Centre, and you know, just from traveling around in Willowdale, you've seen the number of large buildings, which is kind of staggering. At least that development followed the city's official plan. Up until very recently, it was an awful lot of development, but it followed a plan. And what I used to be able to say to the residents is, you know, the good news is you have a plan. The bad news is you have a plan. If somebody conforms to the official plan, yes, they are allowed to stick up a great big building that you might not like, but that's how the system works. And if they are not following the city's planning rules, then we can fight that and turn it down. And as everybody is aware, because of the changes the province made 2 years ago, it has just opened the floodgates to applicants who completely ignore the city's official plan. And we have on the agenda today 3 in the North York Centre that completely ignore the city's official plan, and not by a little bit. like people are coming in asking for 2 and 3 times the density. So you're familiar with what's been built already. Everybody has seen that from driving along Yonge Street or along Doris or along Beecroft. People are coming in asking for 2 and 3 times the density under which those were built. So you can imagine, where we already have the kind of impacts that Councillors Cole and Robinson are becoming very familiar with at Yonge and Eglinton. We have that in a stretch that goes from 401 up to Steeles Avenue, the same distance as Front Street to the Summerhill subway station. That's how long it is. We have that going on that whole length, and it is completely impossible to plan for a community that has enough schools, childcare centers, parks, or even subway capacity for that kind of density. So, I'm glad the staff are recommending refusal, and something we have to bring some return to some sense of normalcy, and just get rid of this whole Wild West mentality that we're now seeing with development applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fillon. Anyone else to speak on this item? Okay, Councillor Fillon, I understand you're moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 28.4, zoning bylaw amendment, removal of holding provision, 719 Sheppard Avenue West. We do have a deputant, Chris Pereira, and I believe this would be a representative of the property owner. Not present. Okay. Okay, any questions for staff? Speakers other than me? Okay, I will move the staff recommendations. Do we even have quorum? Oh, there we go. We have quorum. Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Okay, all those in favor, removal of the holding provision for 719 Sheppard Avenue West? Opposed? That is carried. Next item is 28.7, final report under the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act, a site plan control, 101 Senlac. And I have deputants on the list here. I believe they're both property owners. Is Jeff Dennis on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so Mr. Dennis, I believe you are the representative of the property owner?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
All right. Good morning, actually. My name is Jeff Dennis, and I'm the Director of Development for the Mount Pleasant Group of Cemeteries. I'm pleased to be speaking today to the Community Council in support of our application to construct a new columbarium niche building at our York Cemetery, located at 101 Senlac Road. For those that don't know MPGC, our relationship with the city extends all the way back to 1826, when Toronto was a small Victorian capital known as the town of York. At the time, only Anglicans and Roman Catholics could be buried in authorized cemeteries within the city limits, and everyone else had to be buried outside those limits. In 1826, MPGC created our first cemetery with the mandate of providing non-denominational burial spaces for all within the city, and has been in continuous operations ever since. Over the past 200 years, we've grown and changed with the City of Toronto, and now own and operate 10 cemeteries across the GTA. Although our founders could never have imagined the diverse multicultural metropolis Toronto has become today, in many ways our mission of creating and maintaining non-denominational cemeteries and providing choice to the residents of Toronto is even more relevant in the 2020s than it was in the 1820s. Cemetery space in Toronto is a finite, non-renewable resource, as under Ontario law, all interment rights are sold in perpetuity. As the existing cemeteries in Toronto age, land available to provide future generations with options to memorialize their loved ones in proximity to where they live becomes increasingly scarce. So maximizing the use of existing cemetery lands is of utmost importance to MPGC as we work to continue providing meaningful choice to the residents and communities in which we reside moving forward. Over the past decades, cremation has increasingly become the preferred choice for many Torontonians versus traditional in-ground burial. And as a result, we now see approximately 70% of all GTA families we serve choosing cremation versus about 55% in the year 2000. With the changing demographics and the expected increase in the city's population from immigration as predicted by Stats Canada, we expect the demand for cremation to continue to rise as many faiths and cultures have practices that dictate or prefer cremation over burial. This proposal is in direct response to the growing demand for cremation memorialization options in the city, and in particular indoor glass niches, which have proven to be a preferred choice for many families. For those that haven't visited York Cemetery before, the property is a 172-acre cemetery stretching from Beecroft Road at our east boundary across Senlac and extending west into the ravine system that connects to Bathurst Park. The property is over 90% open green space and boasts an impressive arboretum carefully managed by our on-staff arborists. Although 10 private trees are scheduled to be removed as part of this project, many of them have been identified by our arborists as non-native species and or nearing the end of their natural life. And as part of the project, the arboretum will be enhanced by the planting of more than 30 new trees and significant other plant material near the proposed building. We currently have 3 smaller columbarium buildings which house glass-fronted niches at York Cemetery. And given their success over the past 10 years, we believe it is in the public interest to continue offering this option to families and in fact to construct a larger facility with the ability to meet this growing demand for many years to come. The existing 3 columbarium buildings are all green, utilizing geothermal heating and cooling systems and roof-mounted solar panels to run effectively off the grid, and have successfully done so for the past decade. Our proposed building, although larger than the previous 3, will employ these same technologies and promises to be just as green as the existing facilities. As you will see from the staff report associated with this application, we've been working with Toronto Planning and other agencies to gain approval for the construction of the new columbarium buildings. And we've reached a point where the planning department is ready to issue a notice of approval conditions to MPGC, pending the satisfaction of the additional requirements of the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act. Under the provincial act that governs the cemetery industry, the FBCSA, in addition to the typical approvals required through the planning and building permit process, we also require consent from our regulator, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. And as part of gaining this consent, the Act requires that the municipality publishes a notice of decision indicating that the project is in the public interest. We're here today seeking that decision and hope that given the information I've just provided, and as recommended by the staff report, the Community Council will do just that. Authorizing the publication of the notice of decision by the City Clerk is required by the FBCSA, and allowing MPGC to continue working with staff to finalize our site plan and the eventual building permit approvals, gaining the consent from the BAO, and then moving forward with the construction of this new building that will provide new choices for families in their time of need for many years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Any questions for the deputant? I do not see any. Richard Verrier. From Carrier Mausoleums Construction, Inc.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Richard Verrier. Chief Dennis just did a very good presentation. The main reason that we registered as a delegation was to answer any question that the councillor might have. So, very low this project, this presentation, short of the sustainable features that we're proposing, which is like brought forward because of the success story of the buildings that we constructed at that place. Needs to be noted again that it is probably the most sustainable design that we can think of. This building will add a zero emission feature. It doesn't have any gas detection. It doesn't have any. It will not produce any emission whatsoever. So whatever we hear on the news lately about the global warming, this corporate citizen, Mount Pleasant Group of Cemeteries, has taken the bull by the horn like over 10 years ago and started to act on like what our planet is facing. So I think I really don't have anything to add short of that. But thank you for your time, and looking forward to hopefully get this notice of decision.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Any questions for staff? No. Speakers?
With the staff recommendations,
Okay, staff recommendations moved on 28-7, final report regarding 101 Senlac, under the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 28-11, I understand that the motion is ready. We'll just put that on the screen. Okay.
yeah, thank you. So just an addition that we request parkland on site. This is one of those really bad applications that completely ignores the city's secondary plan. We've already had the community consultation, and one of the, in addition to opposing a really bad development at the consultation, there was a lot of comments about the need for green space in the area because of the amount of development that already exists, and several new applications that are coming in. So we do have the right to ask for parkland on site, and we should be able to get a significant park by doing that.
Okay, any questions?
So staff recommendations with that addition.
Okay, so that amendment's been moved. Any questions for the mover? Any further speakers? Okay, let's put the motion on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item is 2814, always stop control. I'm going to just hold that down for a couple of minutes until we get that one sorted out. So we're going to jump over to 2820 is the next timed item. Encroachment appeal, 1580 Avenue Road. Councillor Cole. And I do not have any deputations listed on this item.
I move staff recommendation.
Okay, staff recommendations moved on 1580 Avenue Road, an encroachment appeal. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2821, encroachment appeal, ground sign at 25 Adra Grado Way. This, I believe, the Deputy Mayor, Minna Wong, is taking carriage of this item. I do not see any deputations on this item, so what's the direction?
Staff recommendation?
Staff recommendations moved on 2821. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2822, request for a fence exemption to Manitou Boulevard. And I do have a deputant on the item, Michael Burke. Michael Burke is on the line. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes. We can hold the item down if he's disappeared.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to grant the fence exemption, number 2.
For
I'm not sure if that's the applicant or not.
2822?
Yeah.
Okay. So this deputy is not here or something. Councillor Cole has moved granting of the fence exemption on item 2822 for 2 Manitou Boulevard. Could put that on the screen. There we go. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Uh, 2823, we have deputants. It's a fence exemption for 61 Dane Avenue. And Tracy Trandang, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Ms. Dang. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and Committee of Council. My name is Tracy Dang, and I am the owner of 61 Dan Avenue. And I also have the speaker online with me as well, which is Mr. Benzovani, which is the owner of 63 Dan Avenue, who will be the one support my fence exemption application. So I believe that it is very important for you all to have a better understanding of why I submitted this fence exemption application. First of all, my husband and I, we are the founder and pastor of a church in downtown Toronto called PT Revival Church, and make a significant positive impact on this community in the past 6 years, in 2015. A little bit background, I'm also a mathematics and business and economic high school teacher at the Toronto District School Board. I want to address with you about my concern about my neighbor, Mr. Zusep and Miss Maria Pete at 59 Dan Avenue, North York, who objected to my side fence height because they are continuing to interfere my family's privacy. I have heard from multiple neighbors that Mr. Zusep, he also known as Joe, has been contacting the police and the city for so many times to complain about different things that he accused toward the people in this neighborhood, and my family is one of those victims. He has some sort of mental illness here because he used to tell my husband and I that he could see the dead people walking around his house, and he also mentioned that he can talk to the dead soldier in World War II, dead children, and be able to see Jesus Christ. So that's when my family becomes skeptical in terms of communication with this neighbor. And I'm sure that the police and also the city inspector recorded numerous calls received from this man towards many different complaints. Regarding our property, this is a new custom-built house. Was recently completed around December 2020. And throughout the whole building process journey, Mr. Giuseppe from 59 Dan Avenue continues to find many ways to interfere with the living in peace of our family. And we didn't do anything wrong, but, you know, he keeps calling the police on us, and every time when the police show up at our home, and at the end they say, you know, it's a false complaint and accusation, and they just left the scene. So in particular, our side fence were constructed at 8 feet height because we want to have a recreational area at our rear backyard for our family to play basketball and soccer. And if the fence is below 8 feet height,
the ball could easily fly
Okay,
over
let's,
to the neighbor
just,
backyard.
sorry, one sec, Ms. Dang. Just,
Yes.
let's stick to the fence itself rather than a
Sure.
commentary
Okay.
on your dispute with the neighbors.
Okay,
So
yes,
let's,
okay, I agree, sure.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. So basically, we worry that if the fence is below 8 feet high, the ball could easily fly over to the neighbor backyard, could interfere with the neighbor, either 59 Den as well as 53 Den Avenue. And furthermore, because of the back of our house have all large window, I did send a picture of the exterior and the interior view of our new build home. It's basically the main level is already higher above than the main floor, like other bungalow house. So that's why the backyard, we have all large windows. And personally, I catch this neighbor multiple times looking inside our house from either his backyard or from his window. And I personally feel extremely uncomfortable as a woman because I usually wear comfortable clothes walking around the kitchen area and even breastfeed my baby. So the kitchen and the common area is where my family spend most of the time there. And when I realized he's looking at me from his backyard, and I look at him and he immediately walk away.
All right, Ms.
So
Stang, if you could,
yes.
yeah, so you're just approaching 5 minutes. If you could just wrap up, and maybe there's a couple of questions for you.
Okay. Yes. So basically, due to many incidents that he interfered with my family, there's a picture evidence of him trespassing, walk into our property that caught by video camera, and I also submitted the picture to the city councilor as well for proof of my statement. So due to all the reasons above, it is essential for us to keep the 8 feet fence height between our property and the neighbor. Otherwise, this neighbor will continue
All right, well, thank you,
violating
Ms.
the
Dang.
privacy of our family.
Ms. Dang, thank you very much.
Sorry. Yes.
Are there any questions for the deputant? Just very quickly, are you at 59, Dane, or 63?
No. You mean me?
Are you
asking?
Yeah, are you at? Oh, you're at 61, right? Okay.
I am the owner of 61 Den Avenue, which
Sorry,
is
61. Yeah.
person,
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
That's an assumption. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for the deputant? So you're the owner of the fence. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just for clarity. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Dang. Joseph Benjivani?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Joseph. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Sure. Just out of curiosity, can someone just tell me when it passes the building, what's the height restriction? Is it 8 feet?
Huh? Community council.
Your time, you're speaking to the fence.
Yes.
So you've applied, have you
I'm
applied for
talking
the
about
exemption?
I'm just asking, somebody can just clarify, because from what I was told, it was 8 feet. Is the restriction, once it passes the...
Well, I let municipal licensing answer the technical questions.
Okay, from what I was,
I can give you an
from what I
answer.
was told, it was, yeah, okay. So I totally agree that the fence is needed. There's a lot of noise because, and I'm actually dealing with that right now with the city, because there's the dump trucks that are at the mall that pick up the garbage. There's a lot, and it does do a sound barrier. It does help. Also, if you're familiar with the street, there was a few shootings, and particularly a couple of neighbors almost did get almost hit with a bullet on Dean itself. There is police reports of this, and so it's also security. I know that there's situations in the area, and they're trying to improve it, but lately it has been excessive. Usually, it's once a year, and Mr. Cole would be familiar with the area as well. I'm pretty sure I've seen him come by, doing his things. So security is a big thing. Privacy is another thing. Also, I have small kids as well, and I feel that with just having the privacy and just having sports and letting them, if the ball interferes, not going on the other neighbors, it's fine. I know that you've restricted conversation, but in regards of that particular neighbor, but when people take advantage of the situation in a sense of knowing how to manipulate the system to benefit them, I wish that I can talk to Mr. Cole myself, and there's numerous evidence of that particular person that I just strongly advise that you. Let me finish.
No, you're not going to finish until you hear me. I want you. You're supposed to argue that this fence exemption is justified. I think that's your.
It is justified.
Yeah, if that's your position.
I feel that. I just would like to talk to Mr. Cole.
Without attacking. Okay, we're going to cut you off.
Can I finish talking to Mr. Cole?
No, you're not going to finish talking. So you're going to talk about why your position is the fence exemption should be granted. So you're to talk to that issue. You're not supposed to attack neighbors or councillors. That has nothing to do with it.
I'd like to talk to him personally. But other than that, it's for the bullets, to security. I know that it might sound absurd about these bullets, but there is evidence of numerous types of shootings not only in the area but on our street. It's happened like 3 times. My neighbor did get his car 2 bullets did get towed. I mean, to get hit with his car, and he actually towed his car, right? Like, I have small kids, they have small kids, the area's got small kids. Any way that I think that I can do security and just protect my whatever I have, which is my home, I would appreciate it. And, I know Mr. Cole is doing his best, and I just hope that he can just agree with this, right? It's a small little thing. I don't think it's a big deal. And that's it. That's all I got to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the deputant? And I would ask, we need one more person in the meeting. Councillor Robinson or Deputy Mayor Rena Wong, if you could turn your video on. There we go. Thank you. Any questions for the deputant? Okay. Thank you very much. Joseph Petty?
Never mind. Hello.
Is this?
Hello?
Yes, is this Joseph?
It's Mrs. Petty. It's Maria Petty. Hi.
Lillian Petty?
No, it's Maria.
Maria Petty. Okay, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes. And please keep your comments to the fence exemption. No attacks on city councillors or on neighbors.
Well, I oppose what you just said because my neighbor, Tracy, has said terribly false things about my husband. So you need to let me speak as well.
No, this is not a court of law.
I have lived.
This is not a court of law.
I understand that, but why did you not stop her sooner then?
We did warn her, and
she said some horrible things that are totally false. I've lived in this home for 41 years. I oppose the unlawful height of my neighbor's fence at 61 Dane Avenue. Apart from the myriad of bylaw infractions and continued attacks on our property, my husband and I always seem to be placed in a position of overcoming unscrupulous activity emanating from 61 Dane Avenue. I would first like you to draw your attention to MLS officer Stephen Petro's conduct. Not only did this city official make untruthful statements to my husband about the fence.
All right, that's enough. That's enough.
Okay, the fence is unlawful. It is 8 feet high, and it should not be 8 feet high. The fence has, just a minute, the fence in question has created a repair nightmare as the damage to our retaining wall can only be corrected by removing the 61 Dane Avenue fence entirely. Our neighbors have encased our retaining wall between 2 fences, their fence and our fence. The fence in question has killed our grass, and our sod receives little sun on the east side of our home because of the fence height. It extends as much as 2 feet more than the bylaw height maximum. Okay? Now, I could go on about the puppy mills that were being run next door and animal cruelty, but you won't let me speak. Hello?
All right, no, I'm still here. So you're done?
Well, I'm not done. If you'll let me speak, I will tell you about the nuisance that the neighbors are.
You have 5 minutes,
They
but
run illegal puppy mills. They sell animals from their property. I think the fence is used to hide their privacy because they don't want people to see their illegal activity.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much for your comments. If you're not satisfied with the decision of this council or city council, you can go to the courts. Okay? So I'm going to now ask if there are any questions of the deputant. There are no questions of the deputant. Thank you very much. Are there questions for staff? I don't see any questions for staff. Are there any speakers? Councillor Cole.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move the granting of the offense exemption.
Well, thank you, Councillor Cole. The motion is on the screen. Councillor Cole is moving granting of the application for offense exemption. All those in favor? I can't see. Okay, there we go. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. 2824, application to remove a private tree, 31 Norden Crescent. We do have a deputant, John Zanatti.
Hi, yes.
Are you
Hi.
are you the property owner, or are you the owner's representative?
No, I am a lawyer, but I am the property owner.
Okay, thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. First, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, community, listening to my application here, and thank you, Councillor Wong, for getting it back on the agenda after I received the late notice. This is an application to remove a walnut tree from our backyard, and it's not an application that I thought I'd have to make. We actually, I just want to say, I sent some pictures. I'm not sure if you've had a look at them. They'll give you a flavor of the problem that we have with the walnut tree. We moved into the home about 2 years ago, and one of the things that we liked was the tree and the shade that it gave us. And we liked all the trees and the nature in the area where we're living here. It's at Don Mills and Lawrence. I'm not sure if you know, there are trails with sponsored trees. People can support the planting of trees, etc. We really like that. And one of the reasons we moved into the house was because of that and this tree. But after having lived there, we moved in the winter and the summer, and now our second summer. We're making this application reluctantly, and it's basically because of the safety of our children and our family. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter and another 7-year-old daughter. We're spending more time at home, and although the backyard is small, it's an increasingly important part of our life in our home. And as you'll note from the arborist report, this is a very large black walnut tree, and it stands directly in the middle of our backyard. It produces a tremendous amount of walnuts. In one day alone, and you'll see this in the pictures, we can pick up 15 or 30 walnuts easily. And because of where the tree stands and its height and the breadth of its canopy, the walnuts effectively fall over the entire backyard, our deck, parts of our roofs, and the side yard. The problem isn't the walnuts themselves. We're okay to pick them up and clean them up, and that's fine. But they fall from a very tall height, and they're at least golf ball size, and they very often come close to landing on our heads, on our children's heads as they're playing in the backyard. You'll see in the pictures we have a little playground set there, and they fall pretty hard. Sometimes they crack when they land on the patio, and we're just worried that they're going to hit us. They've come close as we're out there in the backyard. The kids are getting apprehensive about using the backyard, and it's a pretty important place for them now because they do spend a lot more time at home. So that's the fundamental problem here, and the reason I think that there should be an exemption allowing us to take the tree down. That's also not as important, but we could be sleeping at night, and you will actually hear the walnuts banging on the roof and making a loud noise. And we sleep on the second floor, and the roof is just above us. In terms of the City of Toronto, I've submitted Toronto's the report for action on black walnut trees. And although the bylaw was not accepted so that walnut trees can automatically be taken down, there is in that report contemplated an exception for these particular circumstances. And I've put in my submissions there the exact section of the report which says, look, if there are circumstances where there's a danger issue with walnut trees, it's okay to grant an exception to allow for the removal of the tree. And I think that this is one of those situations here. We've also in the arborist report, you'll see we're replanting trees 2 to 1. It's not like we want to take down a tree and not put up other trees. Our plan involves planting more trees on a 2 to 1 ratio. They're going to be planted in the best practices, and they're going to exist in the backyard. So there will be now 2 trees instead of the 1 after we would take that one down. No neighbors have objected, and I think that in the circumstances here, this is a clear exemption contemplated, which lets us at least use our backyard without being apprehensive or skittish while we're out there. So I'm just asking for the exception for that reason, and I hope you can have a look at the pictures and grant that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Speakers on the item?
This is staff.
So, sorry, questions for staff?
Yeah. Is there someone there from the Forestry Department?
Yes, Mr. Bostock is there.
Mr. Bostock, why don't, this reasonable arguments this gentleman makes, why is it we don't allow him to take, there seems to be all this nuisance and inconvenience. So why don't we allow walnut trees to be taken down?
We look through the chair. We look specifically to the bylaw for guidance when we assess the eligibility of a removal request, and the bylaw doesn't have provisions, to the surprise of many, for things like health and safety, or risk of nuts falling, risk of any other fruit falling. And so in a situation like this, we can't consider the concerns that the applicant, the deputant has raised, and Urban Forestry's duty taken from the bylaw and our procedures is to deny the removal request, and upon appeal, direct it to council, and council is a body that can, it wouldn't be an exception if council approved it. It would be council directing staff to issue the permit, in effect.
How old's the tree? I'm looking at a picture. It looks like it's pretty old.
Age is often difficult to characterize. Trees can grow slowly or quickly, but this is a tree that could be anywhere from 30 to 60 years old, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's pretty big, eh?
It's large, and it's large and stately. It's a well-formed shade tree.
And they're pretty. There's like the picture in the report looks like it was taken in the middle of. Well, it was taken in the winter time, so it doesn't show the foliage really. The walnut trees are quite something when like full bloom. Yeah.
I would say that of any large, maturing, healthy shade tree, but yes, we've seen this tree in leaf, and it's full crowned with a vigorous canopy, no dieback or no significant dieback being evident in the crown.
What does dieback mean?
Dieback would be For example, in the context of the tree's health, if we were to see dead branches at the top of the tree, that could be indicative of a problem with the root system that could speak to a limited longevity for the tree. It's not uncommon to see dead branches in the lower crown or in the interior of the crown. We wouldn't refer to that as dieback. So dieback is a comment that would relate to declining health, which we aren't seeing here.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished with my questions. James?
Thank you. Yep, no, I am here. We're just working on a couple of clerical items. Any other questions for staff? No? Speakers on the item?
I'll just speak. Can I speak, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to move the staff recommendations. I'm at a certain level sympathetic to the homeowner, but we've done a lot of these here at this community council with regard to walnut trees, and this particular case, this report doesn't, and the deputy doesn't really sort of distinguish itself from any of the other ones, and the reasons for the refusal are the same as have previously been generated. It looks like a very nice tree, and it looks like it's a very old tree, and it looks like in the summertime it's a very beautiful tree. So I think that, given the way the bylaw is constructed, there isn't sufficient reason to support the taking down the tree. I mean, if we were to take down all the walnut trees in North York, I think that would be regrettable, and I think they're quite beautiful trees. So I'm moving the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the staff recommendations are moved for the for 31 Norden Crescent, which is a denial of the request to remove. Any other speakers on the item? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I'm going to go to the walk-on items. 2825 was designation of accessible parking space on Mulland Avenue. Now, Councillor Cole, I thought you were are you withdrawing this item?
Yeah, I'm withdrawing that because the applicant changed his mind, and staff did a lot of work. They changed his mind anyway. I'm moving withdrawal of this item on Mulholland Avenue. Yeah. Okay.
Motion to withdraw. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2826. I don't know whether we have any deputants on this item. 3140 and 3170 Dufferin Street, 60 to 68 Apex Road. This is a preliminary report.
Some of the staff recommendation then that the mailing or the area for mail-outs would be doubled to 240 meters, and that they don't miss any houses.
All right. Is there a motion on this? Okay, so you're moving staff recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, staff recommendations moved on item 2826, zoning bylaw amendment, community consultation. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Councillor Cole, if you have a catchment area change, you should speak directly with planning staff.
I will do so. Thank you.
Item 2827, 232 Snowden Avenue, request for city solicitor to attend at the Toronto local appeal body. Any deputants on the matter? No deputants that we can see. Any questions for staff? Councillor Robinson, this is your item? And I'll take carriage. She's not there. So I'll move it on her behalf. But we're not at speaker's yet. Any questions for staff? Any speakers other than me? Okay, my speech will be very short. I will move the recommendations to authorize the city solicitor to attend the Committee of Adjustments decision regarding the application and authorize the city solicitor to negotiate a settlement. And of course, authorize the city solicitor along with appropriate staff to attend the Toronto Local Appeal Board if no settlement can be reached. That's on behalf of Councillor Robinson. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2828, requirements for posting building permits.
Yes, can I, questions of staff?
All right, questions of staff. Councillor Cole.
Okay, staff. First of all, what I asked for was really, if you heard my discussion at council, the building department, is I asked for why there weren't any building permits posted on all the new condo developments, residential condo developments throughout my ward. So not about infill. But anyways, the question is, are these new condos that have been approved under construction, are they required to post a building permit on their hoarding around the construction site?
To the councillor, the requirement under the Building Code Act is that they have to post in a conspicuous space. So it's not multiple locations, it's usually in a space that is visible to the public.
So they're required to post a bill. When are they required to post the building permit?
The permit is required to be posted prior to starting construction.
And what happens if they don't post the building permit?
Through the chair, there are mechanisms under the Building Code Act that would allow for enforcement actions, including up to issuing orders and possible fines.
Has there anybody been fined for not posting a building permit this year?
I'm not aware, through the chair, I'm not aware of anybody being fined at this point.
Why are these construction sites for condos in my ward not posting building permits after repeated requests that they do so?
I would have to follow up on the specific sites, but that is a requirement of the inspector to verify that the signs are on site and have those conversations with the contractor. And if they refuse to post the signs, then basically there is the enforcement mechanisms that should be instituted.
So can you give me a list of the building permits that have been issued in my ward on these condo sites, not the infill? And I'd like to know why they're not posting their building permits. And have they been inspected? This is the other thing. How do I know that there's been any inspections done of these construction sites when there are no building permits even on the hoarding?
So the Toronto building has several avenues in regards to following up in regards to whether a permit has been issued for a specific construction site. There are website portals through the Toronto building internet site that you can actually punch in an address and get confirmation in regards to any permits that have been issued or have been submitted and what the status is for them. So you can also get confirmation of whether orders have been issued. So there are mechanisms in place. As I said, the Ontario Building Code Act requires that a single building permit be posted on sites in a location that is visibly, is visibly available to the public. If there are specific sites that you would like to have me look into, I'm more than happy to do that.
But my office has reported numerous building sites without building permits for months now over the last year, and they still do not have building permits. So they're basically ignoring the requirement.
Through the chair, I could look at that and respond back to the council.
And also, are they required to put up any rendering of what's to go on the site? I know that in some of the residential infill, there are sometimes a rendering explaining what's going up. Are these, quite substantial condominium, especially, or purpose-built rental towers, not required to put up any kind of rendering showing what's going to be built on that site?
Under the current regulations, there is no requirement to provide a elevation type drawing indicating what site would be under the Building Code Act or the requirement under the permit.
So there's no requirement to even put a small depiction of the building that is proposed there. So they are required to put up their building permit when they do that, but they don't have to put up a rendering to inform the public of what's going up in that location.
Quite often, through the chair, quite often there are renderings that are required to be posted prior to planning applications, but once the permit is ready to be issued for larger type projects, there is no requirement that.
Okay, that was your last question, Councillor Cole.
Okay, thank you very much.
I also have a few questions, unless someone else on the committee would like to go. So when we say they're building without a permit, do we mean that they're building without posting their permit, or they've actually pulled no permits for that construction project? Which is it? This is to staff.
Through the chair, I believe the question was is the posting of the permits. Their construction firms are not posting the actual permit themselves.
So they're legally building, but they're not conforming to the bylaw of posting the permit is really the issue here.
I believe that's the issue that the council brought forward in the last council meeting.
Now, when we have an application, we do put out large signage, and there usually is a modular design within that application or site use change. Does that stay, and it does show actually, and give details of what's going up there? It's not an aerial photo. Is that supposed to stay during the construction period, or that comes down once the application is approved and work begins?
Through the chair, once a permit is issued, there is no requirement under the building code to maintain the signage for the applicant that precede the building permit issuance. Maybe a better question for planning to respond in regard to the time in which those notifications be posted.
Alan, you're breaking up a little bit there. It's a little hard to hear you. Now, usually, I guess if it's a condominium development, or even if it's rental, they would have some kind of sales office nearby, or, I don't know how they'd sell the units without a sales office. Obviously, that building would have design elements and heights and built forms and all those details that we would require of a developer.
Through the chair, that would be correct.
Okay, I'm done. Any other questions for staff? So, Councillor Cole, what would you like to do with this? The staff recommendation is to move receipt.
What I'd like to move is that the information I asked for has not been given. They misinterpreted my request, and they just talked about infill. What I'd like to do is to move that they come back with a list of requirements for condominium tall tower development sites, and what the building permit display requirements are, and also to give me a rundown of how many builders have ever been fined in the city of Toronto in the last 10 years for not posting a building permit sign on their location over the last 10 years. So that's just a short amendment to that. And I'll just speak to that while they're putting that together. Mr. Chairman, the reason why...
Councillor Cole, they're not putting it together. So you have to work...
that's why I want to just... let me speak to it then while they're putting it
There's
together.
no motion to speak to. So what I would suggest, unless we want to recess and you can work on the motion for 10 minutes or so, I would suggest we defer the item, work with staff to get more details, and if they don't come in, move your motion at the next community council meeting, because there's no motion here for to move. There's nothing. What you just said.
Is this the last item? Is this the last item on the agenda?
No, there's one more.
Okay, so let's my staff will put together that motion, and while we deal with the next item, we'll come back to it if possible.
You want to hold the item down and get your motion ready?
Yep.
Just want to make sure we have quorum. Is Councillor Robinson online or no? The only other item I see outstanding is 2814, Always Stop Control Stanley Green Neighborhood. I'm going to move defer it to the next scheduled community council meeting. Yeah. All right, those in favor of deferral? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, Councillor Cole, regarding this debate over posting of building permits, would you support deferral of this item, work with staff, and then formulate your motion at the next community council meeting, or are you requesting that it be done right now?
Well, again, I've been waiting for answers from our building department for months on the lack of building permits, so I don't know. I just don't have much faith that we're going to ever get answers to these things. But anyways, I will defer to the next meeting.
Okay, a motion to defer for 2828. Councillor Cole, I suspect it's an enforcement resources issue.
But these developers can put up a lousy building permit sign, for God's sake. They're making tens of millions of dollars. They can't afford a little building permit sign on their hoarding.
Okay, a motion to defer on 2828. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm going to, just before we do the bills, you know what? I've had a second thought about 2814, Always Stop Control Stanley Green Neighborhood. Could I have a motion to reopen? I'd like to deal with it now.
Also move reopening.
All those in favor of reopening? Opposed? That is carried. So I'm not going to take up any more committee time. All three stops.
Wait.
It's 2814.
Okay, no problem. Anyways, I deferred it.
So it's back on the floor. I thought we'd take care of this business right now. Basically, all three stops were turned down by various studies. These stop signs in this neighborhood were put in by my predecessor without this kind of rigmarole. But the one that is most urgent and comes closest to the warrants is the Downsview Park Boulevard and Frederick Tisdale Drive stop sign. So I've moved a motion. I have a motion to approve that one and let the other two go. It's an area that needs people to stop so they can cross over to Downsview Park. It's an area where there's just too much of a runway where we need people to stop and let pedestrians cross. And I think it's a compromise on the three that were requested. So, all those in favor? For approving one. Opposed? That carries 3-2. Okay, thank you very much. We'll do the bills. Councillor Robinson?
Best here. I'm trying to work off my phone. I've had technical issues. That the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council, acting under delegated authority at meeting 28 on November 23rd, 2021.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. General bills? Councillor Fillion?
That the North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bill 908 to 910 and 937 to 938 prepared for the November 23rd, 2021 meeting 28 of the Community Council.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our business. Oh, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I believe that concludes our business for today. Thank you, Carly, Julie, for your clerking. Thank you, IT. Thank you, councillors and deputants. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and of course, a happy holiday season and a Happy New Year. I hope everyone remains safe, and of course, we'll reconvene in 2022. All the best, and thank you very much.